Firstborn sons do we have in the sanctuary today? Congratulations. Yes. Jacob was the younger son, the second-born of the twins. And for really throughout his whole life, he was trying to steal the birthrights from his older brother. Really from the very beginning, coming out of the womb, his hand was on the heel of his brother, kind of like he was trying to slide past. So his whole life, he's trying to steal this birthright from him, and he finally succeeds. And here's how it happened. Isaac, at the end of his life, an old man, was really on his deathbed and was about to bestow a deathbed blessing, an irrevocable blessing that would once and for all determine which of these two was going to receive this birthright honor. Now, Isaac could not see well at all. His eyesight was very dim. And Jacob, knowing that this was about to take place, sent his brother away and then disguised himself as his brother. He made himself look and feel and even smell like his brother, and then went in to see his father. His father thinks that he's talking to Esau. Really, he's talking to Jacob, gives the final irrevocable blessing to Jacob. Esau comes home, learns what had happened, is obviously angry, wants to kill his brother, so his brother runs away. And that's the way things develop then. Separated, far apart. Life continues that way. Until one day, eventually over time, and there's a sermon in and of itself in what I'm about to say, you can't outrun your past. You can't hide from the things in your past. Eventually, Jacob is going to have to confront Esau. He hears that Esau is coming with an army to find him. And he knows that he can't avoid it. It's going to happen. In fact, it's going to happen tomorrow. It's going to happen tomorrow. And so, the night before this meeting takes place, Jacob spends the night alone, sends his family on ahead of him. He spends the night alone on the banks of a little tributary into the Jordan River called the Jabbok. The Jabbok. And that's where we pick up our story today.
And this is Genesis 32, 22 to 32. The same night he got up and took his 2 wives, his 2 maids, and his 11 children, and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. He took them and sent them across the stream, and likewise everything that he had. Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until daybreak. When the man saw that he did not prevail against Jacob, he struck him on the hip socket, and Jacob's hip was put out of joint as he wrestled with him. Then he said, "Let me go, for the day is breaking." But Jacob said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." So he said to him, "What is your name?" And he said, "Jacob." Then the man said, "You shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with God and with humans and have prevailed." Then Jacob asked him, "Please tell me your name." But he said, "Why is it that you ask my name?" And there he blessed him. So Jacob called the place Penuel, saying, "For I have seen God face to face, and yet my life is preserved." The sun rose upon him as he passed Penuel, limping because of his hip. Therefore, to this day, the Israelites do not eat the thigh muscle that is on the hip socket, because he struck Jacob on the hip socket at the thigh muscle. The word of God for the people of God.
So we can only imagine the state that Jacob is in. He's alone. It's dark. He may be worried, maybe anxious, afraid. The last time he saw his brother wanted to kill him. Anxiety, nervousness, facing this uncertainty. In other words, if ever anybody was in need of a little divine comfort, a heavenly hug, as it were. This is the guy and this is the time. Isn't that, after all, what we want at some core of our being when we're facing great anxiety or great uncertainties and feeling like we're all alone, that to know that we're not, that God is there, that God recognizes us in those situations? And God, for God's part, does not disappoint. God shows up at a time when Jacob needs a visit. But God comes unexpectedly as a stranger, a strange man in human form. And God comes doing a strange thing, wrestling with Jacob all night long. I think there's something profound in what's taking place there. That we get the message that to be a believer and to walk the road of faith is to wrestle from time to time. It's to wrestle with the questions of life. It's to wrestle with God. It's to wrestle with others on the road with God. In fact, the name Israel means to wrestle with God. So there's something about being a believer, to be a faithful follower, that entails wrestling. But more than that, and just as powerfully, for me, there's a message given to us that the God that we worship does not back down from challenges, does not run away and duck and dodge and hide when we come with real questions. Like, God, what am I supposed to do tomorrow? How am I supposed to make it through tomorrow? How am I supposed to stare down this uncertainty? Why is this happening? How could this be part of a plan that's good for me? God doesn't run away from those questions, but rather meets them head on and says, okay, come on, let's go. I can handle this. At our worst and most troubling moments, God's right there with us. And the beautiful thing is, all night long, they're locked together, but they're together. Jacob, for his part, holds on to God, doesn't let go. And God, for God's part, doesn't let go of Jacob all night long. And when day breaks and the sun rises, Jacob sees that it's God right there. If he didn't recognize God earlier because it was night, because it was a strange man, now when the daybreak, he sees that it's God, that he'd been staring God face to face, and he looks back and sees that God was with him throughout the whole dark night. God was with him. And there was something about that being together, not letting go, that blessed him. He's not blessed at the beginning of the struggle. He's blessed at the end of the struggle. He's blessed through that struggle and through that hanging on and staying locked and staying side by side and not running away. That's what blessed him. The blessing came through the nights, not instead of the nights. It came through the nights. And when we turn the page in Genesis 33, when you go home, you can do this. They do reconcile. I mean, they meet each other the next day, and it's just not as bad as he had thought. They reconcile. Esau's coming with an army, but it's an army for reconciliation and not for retaliation. And forever thereafter, Jacob is changed. We see it in this very visible way where his hip is out of joints. He carries a physical scar, and from thereafter he limps. Just like we know that we're scarred physically from the struggles that we have in life. We carry scars on our body that others can see or not see, but they're scars from surgeries we've had, or accidents or injuries. And then there are scars we carry inside of us that others can't see. Emotional wounds, relational wounds that are the product of the struggles we've endured. And Jacob carried that with him. But he also carried with him the reminder with that name that God says, you belong to me. You struggled with me, and I'm with you through that struggle. And he carried with him forever thereafter the reminder of that night that no matter how hard the struggle was, no matter how uncertain the future was, God was with him and did not abandon him. Did not let him go. And that blessing stayed with him forever. Jacob was carried through that night by the presence of God. And he was changed forever because of it. And so right now, I would like to do something with you. It's very interactive right now. I want you to take a quiz with me. If you brought a pen or a pencil, get it out of your pockets or steal the one out of the register book, but put it back, or someone will be mad at me. There's a quiz in your bulletin. It looks like this. You don't have to put your name on this because we don't need to know it belongs to you. We're not going to collect them. You don't have to share them with anybody. This is just between you and God and whoever else you may want to share it with. It's a real easy question. It's a real easy question. There are just a few of them, but it's a yes-no test. And if you don't have a pencil, just mentally do it and keep track of your yeses and nos. But I'm going to read these questions, and if you can answer yes to that, circle Y. If you can answer no to that, then just circle the no. No problem. Either way, this is just your test. But I'm going to ask this question, and you follow along. Has someone in the church ever cheered you up when you were in the hospital by visiting you? Circle yes if yes, and be honest. No if no. Has someone in the church ever sat and listened to you talk through a problem you were facing? Sat with you as you talked about something that was bothering you. Y for yes, N for no. Have you ever lost a job or needed extra income or needed counseling or some professional help? Has someone in the church helped to connect you to those resources? Y for yes, N for no. When you lost one of your dear loved ones, did someone from the church help provide comfort to you? Y for yes, N for no. Has someone in the church ever been someone that you've looked up to in terms of how you might want to live your life as you watch them live theirs? Y for yes, N for no. Can you count a church member as one of your 3 best friends? Y for yes, N for no. If you were in a crisis at 3 o'clock this afternoon, would you call a church member first? Y for yes, N for no. At any time, has a minister from the pulpit, Flewelling, Riley, Nichols, Watkins, ever said something that you still remember today as being hopeful and inspiring? Has the choir ever sung anything that inspired you in a profound way? Or a soloist like Hannah singing in worship inspired you with their gifts of music? Y for yes, N for no. Have you grown in your knowledge of the Christian faith or your ability to live out the faith because of something that you experienced here within these walls? Y for yes, N for no. Everybody got that? You can fold it up if you want to, I don't care. But I do want you to participate in this way. I would like you to stand up if you're able. If you can't stand up, raise your hand. But stand up if you answered yes to one of those. Go ahead, if you're in the front row, you can look around. I know you can probably hear. You get a great view. And you're fully exposed up here too, right? All right, stay standing if you answered yes to 3 or more of those. Stay standing if you answered yes to more than 5. And stay standing if you answered yes to all of them. Yeah, look around. Look around you. And someone's got their hand up back there too. Everybody can sit down. I appreciate you playing along and doing that with me, but this month we have talked about generosity, and we've talked about supporting the church financially. And we've talked about that in different ways because we're different people. We have different names, and that means that we're different. Sometimes we're motivated to be generous because of logic and analysis, because the plan makes sense, because it's reasonable to do so. And that's why 3 weeks ago, Scott Hawbaker stood up here and he talked about how the reality of a church having bills and budgets and expenses and all of that. But not everybody's motivated by those kinds of that logic and reasoning. Some people are motivated by challenges and by creative ways to think outside the box. And that's why 2 weeks ago we talked about a 27-cent challenge and said everybody doing a little bit creatively can go a long way. But today we just close by saying this. The church in its best expression is a community that carries us through the dark nights, that carries us when we're hurting, when we're struggling. And so I'm happy to see that everybody said yes, at least once. The church in its best expression is a community of people that's willing to say, I recognize that you're hurting, and I may not know what to do, but I'm here with you, and I'm not going to leave you like God didn't leave Jacob when he was on the Jabbok. The church, the word church means, in the language of the Bible, is ecclesia. Ecclesia. It's where our Sunday school class, ecclesia, comes from. Ecclesia. And the word ecclesia means those who are called out. Those who are called out. And the church really ultimately is always meant to be called out to be different than the rest of the world. It's meant to be a place right here that allows you to come and be who you are, where you are, whenever you are, and to meet God face to face. And if you're in a place that's struggling or angry or hurting, we don't come and duck and dodge and give easy answers, because there are no easy answers. But this is the place where we'll say we'll be with you, and we'll keep vigil with you, and we'll hold you when you're angry, and we'll hold you when you're sad, and we'll hold you when you're hurting, because that's what the presence of God does. And we'll try to get through that dark night together. And the church is the place where we are allowed to wrestle with God. We can shake our fist at God if that's what we feel like doing. And we can do that together in a loving community, because there are times when we leave this place, for each one of us, there is a walk that we have to walk individually. And we walk that walk individually, not because others don't love us, but because that's the road before us. And nobody can walk my walk for me, and nobody can walk your walk for you. But here at the church, in this safe place where we've wrestled with God and we've seen and heard that God doesn't leave us, that equips us all the more and empowers us to go out there and to walk sometimes that lonely road and that lonely walk, knowing that we are not alone. So, that's why the church is always here. And that's why there's always a need for the church. And that's why we always strive to be generous, because the irony is this God defined for us in a really wonderful way. Generosity is the habit of giving without expecting anything in return. But the reality is that we do, right? We do get so much back. That's why we're here. Thanks be to God.
Today, as we begin the process of wrapping up our 4-week stewardship campaign, Michael mentioned our theme. One of our goals was to provide you with a commitment card, which was a little bit different, gave you the option of not actually indicating the amount of your financial commitment if you so felt. But the fact is that, in my opinion, generosity is not being measured by completing this card or checking a box. We're simply using these commitment cards to assist us with developing a budget for the coming year. And once again, in my opinion, generosity is only measured and determined from within your own heart. If you have not had the opportunity to complete a card, we would still ask that you would prayerfully consider so. And at the conclusion of today's fellowship luncheon, I will be announcing where we are to date on that campaign. During the next couple of weeks, we will continue to receive cards, and many of them will be mailed in, and then our stewardship department will meet to wrestle with the budget. And hopefully at our congregational meeting on December 1st, we will have a budget to present to you for your consideration. As chair of the stewardship department, I would personally like to thank all of you for your support for Central Christian in 2014, and I look forward to another year of getting to know each of you better, another year of growing closer to God, and another year of watching, participating, and supporting Central Christian Church. God calls us to be generous, not when all the bills are paid, not when we have everything we need, not when we see our way clear. God calls us to be generous now, in this present moment, trusting in God who is our provider. And so we give freely as we have received freely. We love fully as we have been fully loved. May the deacons please come forward to receive our tithes, gifts, and offerings.